Good evening, and welcome to Twilight Tale. Tonight, let your eyes grow heavy as we travel back in time to the heart of ancient Rome. In the center of the city stood a colossal ring of stone, an arena so famous that even centuries couldn't erase its name, the Colosseum. By day, it dazzled crowds with spectacle and noise, but in the shadows, it held secrets, dark, deadly, and strangely fascinating. Because beneath the cheering and trumpets, the Colosseum was more than entertainment. It was a machine built for power, fear, and control, a place where lives could change in a single breath, where victory was loud and loss was final. So tonight, settle into your pillow, slow your breathing, and as Rome's torches flicker in the distance, we'll step through the grand arches and uncover the dark and deadly secrets of Rome's Colosseum in this bedtime history from Twilight Tale. Now, let's begin. The setting sun spills golden light across the ruins of Rome, casting long shadows upon the ancient stone. There, standing in its monumental silence, the Colosseum looms, a ghost of a world that has long since passed. The echoes of its once thunderous crowds now rest softly in the air, like whispers of a forgotten prayer lingering on the wind. Time seems to fold upon itself here, and as the evening mist creeps across the cracked stones, the past calls out from its depths, soft, elusive, eternal. Perhaps it was never meant to be found, this truth buried beneath layers of time, beneath the stones that once rang with the cries of the dying. The Colosseum, with its towering arches and grandeur, was built not just for spectacle, but for something darker, something deeper. For within its hollowed core, beneath the intricate patterns of marble and the polished stone, lies a history not of triumph, but of blood. The blood of those who lived and died in service to an empire that saw them as little more than tools, their names erased by time. Whispers tell us of the gladiators, those men and women who were summoned to fight for the entertainment of the masses. Their lives were not their own, but the Colosseum gave them a stage upon which they could play out their fate. They stood before emperors, their eyes cast downward, awaiting a signal, awaiting their destiny. For them there was no escape, only the blood-soaked sands of the arena, where they were either crowned in fleeting glory or consumed by the unrelenting jaws of death. The sun dips lower, and the walls of the Colosseum take on a golden hue, as if they too are steeped in the weight of memory. We are invited to look beyond the grandeur of its construction and to trace the stories held within its stones. Beneath the arches, where once the roaring crowds cheered, a different sound lingers, a sound that carries in the silent spaces between breaths. The walls themselves hum with the weight of time. They know, they remember. It is said that when the light fades and the stars emerge, the Colosseum's true essence becomes visible to those willing to listen. From the heights, one sees the great expanse of the arena below, now empty but once teeming with life and death. The columns stand as silent witnesses, their weathered surfaces carved by centuries of wind and rain, yet still they hold a trace of something ancient. As we descend into the depths of the arena, through the arches that once framed the faces of emperors, we are taken to the underworld of the Colosseum. The underground chambers, hidden, forgotten, are preserved in shadow. Here, beneath the surface, the stories of the gladiators lie waiting. They were once prisoners to fate, shackled to the earth by the will of an empire, and now their stories rest in the dark, untold and unsung. There is a quiet dignity to this place, where the living once waited in silence for the call to battle. Here, among the chambers and tunnels, one might imagine the sound of footsteps, slow, deliberate, yet full of uncertainty, as men prepared for their final moments. Some spoke of finding peace in the dark, others terror. The walls around us still seem to echo their steps, though the living are long gone. Only the faintest trace remains, like a ripple on still water. Beneath the Colosseum, the labyrinth of tunnels and passageways stretches deep into the earth. The labyrinth itself is a metaphor for the lives lost within it, intertwined, complex, yet bound to an inevitable end. Perhaps it is not the blood that stains this place, but the silence of those who passed through it, unseen and unheard by history. The earth remembers, the stones remember. As we wander further into the depths, the air grows cooler and the shadows grow longer. There is a sense of reverence here, a sacredness that is not often spoken of. The Colosseum was not merely a site of entertainment, but a temple of death, where the greatest of all Roman spectacles, the gladiatorial games, were played out in the name of glory, of power, of imperial might. It was a place where the lives of those who fought were measured not in years, but in seconds. Life, it seemed, was fleeting here, like the light that flickers in the dark before it is swallowed whole by the night. Beneath the arches and stone, the Colosseum held its secrets tightly. The blood that stained the sand was not just that of the gladiators, it was the blood of the empire itself. The Colosseum was built by the sweat and toil of those who knew only how to serve, how to sacrifice. And yet their sacrifice was not for something pure, but for an empire that glorified itself in the agony of others. The grand spectacle was both a blessing and a curse, a ritual of sacrifice that spanned generations. For what is empire if not a kingdom built on the bones of the fallen? The shadows grow deeper now, and the last rays of sunlight filter through the towering walls, casting a warm glow upon the stones. It is in this moment that we realize how much has been lost, how much has slipped away, never to return. The Colosseum stands as a monument to power and cruelty, yes, but it is also a monument to the fragility of life. The stones beneath our feet have borne witness to countless deaths, to lives cut short and destinies forever altered. And yet they remain, silent, unyielding, undisturbed by time. The very stones that once rang with the roar of the crowds, that once trembled beneath the feet of warriors and emperors alike, now hold their secrets close. What was it like, we wonder, to stand there amidst the chaos of battle, to know that your fate rested not in your own hands, but in the hands of a fickle crowd? What did it mean to die in such a place, to leave behind a legacy that was forgotten by most, yet immortalized in the dust? These are the questions the Colosseum does not answer. Instead, it leaves them to echo in the silence that now fills the arena. And so we leave, stepping away from the great amphitheater, where time has softened the edges of its once pristine walls. The sun has long set, and the moon now casts its pale light across the ruins. The Colosseum stands in stillness, its grandeur now a shadow of what it once was, yet its history remains, etched in the very stones that hold the secrets of those who lived and died here. Perhaps as we drift into sleep, we are reminded that some stories are not meant to be fully understood. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. The Colosseum, with all its power and bloodshed, remains a monument to a time that is no more. Its secrets are veiled in the silence of the night, waiting for those willing to hear. What we know of it is only a shadow, a reflection in the still waters of history. Perhaps it is enough to simply wonder what remains beneath the surface of its ancient stone. The night air wraps around the ruins of the Colosseum like a soft, unspoken secret, carrying with it the weight of ages. Beneath the great stone arches, where once the roar of the crowd rose in a deafening wave, now only the quiet hum of history lingers, an ancient memory carried on the still breeze. The moon casts its pale light upon the stone, turning the arena into a ghostly silhouette. But it is beneath this great structure, where shadows twist and deepen, that a darker story is told. The entrance to the underworld of the Colosseum is hidden, forgotten even by the winds. We are drawn to it, this passageway that spirals deep into the earth. The stone is worn here, worn by the footsteps of those long gone, whose lives were measured by the brutal call of the arena. Beneath the earth, the air is thick with dust, hanging suspended as if time itself has paused. The walls seem to breathe with the weight of the past, exhaling the pain and fear of those who waited in the silence of these darkened tunnels. In the dim light, the stone is marked with the imprint of countless lives, each one lost in the struggle to survive. The walls are crumbling, but they have not forgotten. They hold the whispers of those who were forced into the dark labyrinths beneath the Colosseum, the gladiators, the animals, the prisoners, those who fought and died, not for honor, but for the entertainment of others. It is said that some still hear their footsteps echoing down these forgotten hallways. Some even say that the walls themselves are haunted by the souls of those who perished here, their cries carried on the wind, faint but persistent. We move deeper into this underworld, each step carrying us further from the world above. The tunnels twist like a serpent, leading us into the heart of this forgotten place. There is no sound, save for the faint echo of our own breath and the soft scrape of our feet upon the ancient stones. In the silence, the very air seems to hum with the memories of those who once walked here, those whose names have been lost to time, whose suffering has faded from history. They wait, still, beneath the earth, forgotten by all but the shadows. It was here, in the bowels of the Colosseum, that the gladiators waited. Their lives, once filled with the promise of freedom, had been stripped away. Now they were nothing more than pawns in a game of life and death, their fates sealed by the whims of the emperor and the crowd. They waited, huddled together in the dark, their breath rising in ragged whispers, praying for a quick end or for a moment of glory. It is said that some of them never saw the light of day again. Their final moments were spent in this place of shadows, where the walls seemed to close in on them, their cries swallowed by the stone. Among them were the animals, beasts, captured from distant lands, brought to the arena to fight and die. They too were trapped in this subterranean prison. The smell of fear and sweat would have filled the air, a heavy, suffocating presence. The gladiators, the prisoners, and the animals, none of them had any say in their fate. They were part of a system that had stripped them of their humanity, forcing them to fight for the amusement of the masses. And in the end, they were forgotten, their suffering lost in the weight of history. We pause now, standing at the edge of a pit, the darkness seeming to stretch on forever below us. The silence here is profound, almost sacred. This was where the final moments of many lives played out, where the clash of swords and the roar of the crowd above were drowned out by the pounding of hearts, the rush of blood, the breath of those who knew that death could come at any moment. Beneath the grand arena there was no escape, no reprieve. There was only the cold, indifferent earth and the slow passage of time. But as we stand here, we sense that something lingers in the air. Perhaps it is the weight of the past, or perhaps it is the souls of those whose lives ended here, their stories left unfinished. It is said that on nights like this, when the wind is still and the moon casts its light over the ruins, the spirits of the gladiators can be heard. Their voices echo faintly in the shadows, the whispers of a time long gone, a time when their lives were held in the balance of a single moment. Some say the stone walls still hum with their presence, as if they are forever tied to this place, frozen in the moment of their last breath. As we move deeper into the labyrinth, the air grows cooler, heavier. The dust clings to our skin, the earth seeming to absorb the weight of our footsteps. We follow the path, our eyes straining to see in the dim light, our senses heightened by the stillness that surrounds us. There is no hurry here, no rush to leave. The past moves slowly, like the dust that settles in the corners of this forgotten world. Each step we take brings us closer to the truth of this place, the truth of the lives lost here, and the cruelty that defined their existence. At the end of this journey, there is no grand revelation, no moment of triumph. There is only the silence, the sacred silence that fills the air, thick and heavy. Perhaps some truths are never meant to be fully understood, never meant to be spoken aloud. Perhaps the stories of those who lived and died here will remain hidden, locked away in the stone and dust, waiting for those who are ready to listen. As we turn to leave, the shadows seem to close around us, and the distant sound of the wind through the cracks in the walls is the only sound we hear. The Colosseum above us stands still, its ancient stones echoing with the weight of history. And in the quiet of the night, beneath the mighty arches and towering columns, we are left with only the memory of those who came before us, their suffering, their courage, their names, all faded now, but still present, still waiting to be heard. Perhaps in the stillness of the night, the specters beneath the arena will continue to whisper, their voices carrying on the wind, forever bound to the Colosseum's silent gaze. Perhaps it was never meant to be found, this truth beneath the arena, but for those who dare to listen, the echoes of the past will always find a way to be heard. The moon, pale and distant, rises over the ruins of the Colosseum, casting a soft, mournful light over the broken arches and weathered stone. The night air is heavy, thick with the memory of centuries, centuries of battles fought, of lives taken, of the sweat and blood soaked into the earth. In the silence, there is an echo, a quiet hum that vibrates through the ancient walls, as if the stones themselves remember. They remember the men who walked through the gates, their fates sealed not by their own will, but by the twist of fortune. The battle that awaited them was not one of choice, but of survival, a cruel, unforgiving game played beneath the gaze of emperors and crowds. What was it like to face death within those blood-soaked walls? Perhaps no answer exists, or perhaps the answer can only be heard when we are willing to listen in the stillness of the night, when the echoes of the past grow faint enough to hear. In the cool shadows of the arena, a single figure stands, his eyes cast downward, feeling the weight of the moment settle over him like a shroud. A gladiator, once a free man, now bound by the iron laws of the arena. His name has been stripped from him, replaced with the title of fighter, a title that carries the weight of his inevitable fate. Each breath he takes feels heavy, the air thick with the ghosts of those who fought before him. The Colosseum around him is vast, its stone arches stretching high above, its arena floor worn smooth by countless battles. And yet, for all its grandeur, for all the power it symbolized, there is nothing but silence in his heart. His mind drifts between the present and the past, between the brutal reality of the arena and the memories of a life before this, a life when he was free, when his name carried meaning, when his fate was his own. Now it is only a shadow of a memory, slipping through his fingers like the sand beneath his feet. It is said that the gladiators were not mere warriors, but tools of spectacle, tools of the empire. They were trained to fight, not for honor, but for survival, their every move calculated for the amusement of the crowd. Beneath the stone arches, the roaring crowds are a distant murmur, a growing swell of noise that echoes in the gladiator's chest. But it is not the roar that he hears in this moment. It is the quiet voice inside his mind, asking the same question again and again. What does it mean to fight, knowing that every breath could be your last? The gates open. The crowd's cheers begin to rise in a cacophony, their voices like a storm that gathers on the horizon. He steps onto the sand. The arena is a great circle, a place where fate is decided, where life and death are balanced on the edge of a sword.
He can hear the clink of his armor, feel the weight of the sword in his hand, but beneath it all there is a profound stillness, a silence that screams louder than the crowd ever could.
The fighters before him have become legends in the eyes of those who watch, their victories celebrated, their names immortalized. But what of those who lost? What of the men who walked into this arena and never returned? What of the ones who stood just like him, waiting for their moment, not knowing whether they would live to see another sunrise? What of the ones who were consumed by the fight, who were chewed up by the wheels of empire and spit out without a trace? The battle begins. It is slow at first, measured, deliberate. Each movement is calculated, each breath taken with caution. The enemy's eyes gleam with the same cold understanding. This is not a fight for glory, but for survival. The blades clash with a sharp metallic sound, each strike a reminder of what is at stake. The dust rises from the sand, settling like a veil over the arena, clouding the air with the weight of fate. As the gladiator's opponent falls, the crowd roars in approval. The gladiator stands above him, his chest rising and falling with the rhythm of battle, his sword still raised. But in that moment there is no glory, only the quiet realization that this fight was never his to win. He has fought before, and he will fight again. But for what? For the crowd's fleeting admiration? For the emperor's twisted sense of power? The victory is hollow, its sweetness lost beneath the crushing weight of inevitability. Each battle brings him closer to the end, but each victory, too, brings him closer to the next. The cycle continues, a loop that never breaks. What did it mean to be a hero in the Colosseum? Was it truly glory that awaited those who triumphed, or was it merely a momentary escape from the jaws of death? The rise of heroes here is not measured in the hands of the victor, but in the moments they steal from the void, before it comes for them once more. As the battles unfold, the gladiator's heart grows heavy with the burden of each fight. The arena, with its grand arches and towering columns, becomes less a place of honor and more a symbol of the crushing weight of fate. The walls echo with the screams of the fallen, but they do not speak of victory. They speak only of the price that was paid. The crowd, once a roaring sea of faces, fades into the background, their cheers a distant hum in his ears. What does it matter, after all? The faces are fleeting, but the arena is eternal. The blood, the sweat, the pain, these are what remain. These are what are carved into the stone, carried forever by the silent walls. The final blow is struck. The crowd roars in approval, but the gladiator remains still, his chest heavy with the weight of another life extinguished. The battle is over, but the war rages on, inside him, in the depths of his soul. What is left when the fight is done? What is left when the gates close and the sand is soaked with the blood of another fallen warrior? As we step away from the arena, we are left with only the faint echoes of the past. The Colosseum stands in the distance, its walls crumbling under the weight of time, but still towering above the city, a monument to a forgotten world. The gates of the arena have closed, but the fates of those who fought within them linger. Was the Colosseum a place of glory, or a place where life was cheap and death always waiting in the shadows. Perhaps it was both, or perhaps it was neither. Perhaps it was a place where fate was never truly in the hands of those who fought, but only in the hands of the empire that built the arena and the crowd that demanded its blood. Some stories are never meant to be understood fully. Perhaps this one is simply a reminder of the price of life, the fragility of fate, and the eternal echo of those who fought beneath the gates of the Colosseum. Perhaps it was never meant to be found, but in the silence of the night, beneath the crumbling stones, the specters of those warriors still stand, waiting for the next person to listen to their story. And perhaps one day we will hear them. As the evening light wanes, the Colosseum stands in solemn stillness, bathed in the soft, ghostly glow of the rising moon. The great structure, once so full of life and clamor, now stands shrouded in silence, a vast monument to a time long past. The roar of crowds, the cries of victory and defeat have faded into the darkness, leaving behind only the whispers of a history that has been buried in the dust of time. Beneath the moon's delicate touch, the Colosseum transforms. Its grand arches, once filled with the sound of thousands, now echo only with the soft murmur of the wind, rustling through the cracks in the stone. We stand at the threshold of this ancient place as the world around us grows quiet. The moonlight stretches across the arena, its beams dappling the stone, tracing the curves of the architecture that once held the eyes of emperors and citizens alike. The walls, though crumbled by centuries, still carry the weight of those who passed through them, and as we step closer, we feel a quiet pull, a soft, almost imperceptible sensation, like a forgotten memory calling from the past. Beneath the moon, the empty seats seem to hold the stories of those who once filled them. The air is thick with the ghosts of spectators long gone, their faces blurred in the folds of time. It is said that the Colosseum was not only a place for entertainment, but also a place where the weight of death and glory mingled, where lives were measured by blood. The roar of the crowds was not for the fighters, they were merely pawns caught in the ebb and flow of an empire's lust for power. No, the cheers were for the spectacle, for the thrill of watching life slip away, for witnessing the boundaries of human endurance tested to their breaking point. But now, in the silence of the night, the seats are empty, and the once deafening cheers have been replaced by an almost sacred hush. The Colosseum, like a sleeping giant, seems to breathe slowly, as though the very stones are exhaling the weight of centuries. As we wander deeper into the ruins, our footsteps echo softly, reverberating off the ancient stones, but the sound quickly fades into the thick air of the night. We trace the outlines of the arches, feeling the rough texture of the stone beneath our fingers. There is something haunting about these ruins, something that stirs the spirit. It is not just the physical decay of the structure, but the stories that linger within it. The Colosseum has always been more than an arena. It was a place of ritual, a place where power and blood were intertwined, where the lives of the fighters were dictated by the whims of emperors and the desires of the people. The emperors watched from their lofty thrones, their eyes cold, their gaze unwavering, as they decided the fate of those below them, and the crowd, oh, the crowd, roared with unholy fervor as the blood flowed. There are whispers, soft as the wind, of the rituals that took place here long before the games. Some say the Colosseum was built upon an ancient sacred site, a place where offerings were made to gods long forgotten, where the earth itself was believed to carry the weight of divine power. As the sun set and the crowds gathered, the spirits of the past may have walked the halls alongside the living. Some voices tell of secret ceremonies performed in the shadows, in which blood was spilled not just for entertainment, but to honor the earth itself. And as the moon rises higher, casting its cool light over the ruins, it feels as if the Colosseum is still bound to those ancient rites where life and death existed not as opposites, but as two sides of the same coin. We move through the arena, each step taking us deeper into its mystery. The moon, now high in the sky, casts its soft light across the worn stones, and the air feels thick with the weight of the past. The ruins, though crumbled and weathered, still speak to us. They speak not with words, but through the silence, through the way the light falls upon them, through the way the wind moves between the cracks in the stone. The Colosseum's past is not buried in the earth, but woven into the very fabric of the place itself. And in this quiet moment, we can almost hear the soft breath of the spirits that linger in the shadows, the souls of those who fought, the souls of those who cheered, and the souls of those who built this place of grandeur and cruelty. The Colosseum was a stage for men to fight and die, for emperors to watch and rule, for crowds to cheer and jeer. But it was also something else. It was a place where the line between the sacred and the profane blurred, where the gods were invoked in blood, where the power of life and death was held in the hands of the living. And now, beneath the moon, we are left to ponder, what does it mean to build such a place? What does it mean to pour so much power, so much violence, so much life into the bones of a structure that stands for eternity? Perhaps, in the end, the Colosseum was never truly about the games. Perhaps it was always about the cycle, the endless cycle of life, death, and rebirth that the empire tried to control. The gods of the arena were not the ones who watched from their thrones, nor were they the emperors who ruled with iron fists. No, the true gods were the ones who lived in the walls, in the shadows, in the whispers between breaths. They were the ones who shaped the fate of every gladiator, of every spectator, of every emperor. And even now, beneath the moonlit sky, those gods still linger, silent, eternal, watching. As the night deepens and the moon climbs higher, the Colosseum stands in its quiet majesty. The air is still, the ruins now bathed in silver light, and the wind whispers through the cracks in the stone. The past lingers here, suspended in the shadows, forever bound to the earth. The sounds of the crowds, the cheers, the clash of swords have all faded into memory, but the spirits of the Colosseum remain, silent, waiting, watching. Perhaps it was never meant to be found, this truth beneath the grandeur, beneath the blood and spectacle. Perhaps the stories we seek are not meant to be told. Some stories, after all, only whisper when we are ready to hear them. And so the Colosseum remains, a place of shadows and light, of memory and silence, a monument to a time long gone, but never truly forgotten. As we stand here, beneath the moon, we realize that some mysteries are never meant to be solved. They are meant to be felt, to be lived, to be experienced in the silence that comes after the roar has faded. And so we listen, to the wind, to the stones, to the ghosts, and we are left with the quiet echo of a question that may never be answered. What is the true cost of glory? The sun sets slowly, casting long shadows across the ruins of the Colosseum. The great stone walls, once vibrant with the echoes of 1,000 voices, now stand silent and crumbled, as if the weight of time itself has pressed them into quiet submission. But in the dusk, as the air thickens with the chill of evening, the Colosseum seems to come alive again, not in the way it once did, with the roar of crowds and the clash of swords, but in the memories it carries, the memories of emperors, of warriors, of death, and of glory. We find ourselves in a distant past, beneath the heavy gaze of Emperor Titus. There he sits, high upon his imperial seat, the raised platform where he could see all, the dust, the blood, the sweat of men who fought not for honor, but for survival. From this elevated throne, he surveyed the scene, his eyes cold, detached, as the gladiators bled beneath him. His judgment was absolute, a power given not by the people, but by the divine right to rule over life and death. The crowd cheers, the air vibrates with their energy, but Titus remains unmoved, his silent gaze betraying no emotion. What does he see in this spectacle, in this dance of blood and pain? Perhaps he sees only the affirmation of his own power, the control he wields over not only the bodies of the gladiators, but over the very souls of the people watching below. The Colosseum itself was built to serve this very purpose, a monument to the might of the empire, a tool to appease the hunger of an emperor who wished to assert dominion over all. It was not just a place for sport, it was a stage for the grand spectacle of Roman power, a place where life and death were manipulated to maintain order, to strike fear, and to remind the people of the absolute control the emperor held over them. The games were not just about the fighters, not even about the crowd, they were about the empire's need to exert its will. In the arena, the emperor's power was not just visible, it was palpable, heavy in the air. Each clash of the sword, each fall of a gladiator was an affirmation of his unyielding authority. But there is something darker beneath the grandeur, something hidden in the shadows. The games, as magnificent as they were, held within them a paradox. Humanity's greatest virtues, courage and honor, twisted into something grotesque. The gladiators, once free men, now bound by chains of fate, were forced to embody honor and courage in ways that defied their very humanity. Courage in the face of certain death, honor in the fight to kill or be killed. These ideals, so pure in their origin, were perverted by the demands of an empire that valued spectacle over soul. The virtues that once defined the warrior spirit were used as tools in a game where only one could emerge victorious, and those who did not were discarded, their names forgotten, their spirits bound to the very sands of the arena.
It is said that the emperor watched with a detached eye, perhaps indifferent, perhaps reveling in the display of power, but always silent. There were no cheers from his lips, no gestures of approval. His judgment was not to be questioned.
In the silence of his throne, he decided the fate of those below. The games were not a test of strength or skill, they were a test of loyalty. The gladiators, whether they lived or died, were subjects of the emperor's will. Their bodies, their lives were in his hands, to do with as he pleased. To survive was to prove loyalty to the empire. To fall was to be forgotten, cast aside into the dust. Beneath the surface of this grand display, there were those who saw the truth of the games, their meaning, their purpose, and the silent screams of those who fought and died beneath the emperor's gaze. Whispers tell us that there were moments when the arena fell silent, when even the crowd paused to witness the gravity of what was unfolding before them. In those fleeting moments, the true nature of the games revealed itself, not as a celebration of courage, but as a demonstration of power, of the cold finality of the emperor's judgment. The emperor did not cheer, he did not show joy. His expression was one of impassive authority, for the games were not about the fighters, they were about control. As the moon rises above the Colosseum, the ruins seem to breathe with the weight of these ancient truths. The games may have ended long ago, but the echoes of that time still linger, carried in the wind that stirs the dust on the sand. What of those who fought for nothing more than their own survival? What of those who fought not for glory, but because they were forced to? Their names have faded, their stories buried beneath the sands, but their spirits linger. Perhaps they are the true victors, those who walked the arena not for the emperor, not for the crowd, but for themselves. Perhaps in their silence they found the true meaning of courage and honor. The night deepens, and we are left to reflect upon the paradox of the Colosseum. Was it a place of glory where heroes were made, or was it a place of cruelty where life was cheap and death was always lurking? The answer, perhaps, lies somewhere in between. The Colosseum was both, a sacred arena where the power of an emperor could be asserted, but also a place where the human spirit was tested to its limits, a place where the boundaries of life and death were constantly pushed and pulled. As we walk through the ruins, the once grand arches now crumbling in the quiet darkness, we feel the weight of the past upon us. The emperor's silent judgment lingers in the air, still powerful, still eternal. The games may have ended, but the echoes of their meaning remain. In the stillness, we wonder if the emperor ever felt the weight of his decisions, if he ever pondered the lives he decided were worth living and those he decided were not. The silence grows deeper, and we are left to wonder whether true power lies in the ability to give life or in the ability to take it away. Perhaps it was never meant to be understood, this silent judgment, but beneath the weight of the past, the truth lingers, waiting to be heard. Perhaps some truths are never meant to be found. Perhaps the emperor's judgment, like the ruins of the Colosseum, is a reminder of the power that can shape history, and the silence that follows when that power fades into the shadows. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. And so we leave the Colosseum, the moon above now casting its soft light upon the crumbling stones. The emperor's silent judgment remains, marking the space between the living and the dead, between the rulers and the ruled, between power and consequence. And in the silence of the night, we are left with the haunting question: what is the true cost of silence, of power, of judgment? The Colosseum stands still beneath the weight of a fading sky, the sun casting its final golden rays over the ancient stone. Once a monument to the might of Rome, now it is a silent shadow, a breathless relic of a world long past. The air around it is thick with time, laden with the memories of the countless voices that once filled its vast arena. But now only the whispers of the wind stir the ruins, their cries fading as quickly as they came. The emperor's voice is no longer heard, and the once deafening roar of the crowd has been swallowed by silence. This is the world of the Colosseum now, a place where the echoes of the past lie dormant, waiting for someone to listen. It is said that when the games ended, they did not fade quietly, they died slowly, like the dying breath of an empire. What had once been a symbol of Roman power, a ritual of strength and blood, gradually became a hollow echo, a shadow of its former glory. As the empire weakened and the world shifted beneath its feet, the games too began to lose their meaning. No longer a celebration of the empire's might, they became a tragic reminder of its decay, a performance that no longer held any purpose beyond the ritual of bloodshed. The arena, once teeming with life and death, now stood empty, its grand arches reverberating with nothing but the wind's soft hum. We step closer to the Colosseum now, moving slowly through the ruins. The sand in the arena, once soaked in the blood of countless battles, is now bare, its surface cracked and forgotten. The air is still, heavy with a sense of sorrow, of something lost to time. The stone, though worn and weathered, still stands tall, its walls still remembering the weight of those who once entered here, those whose lives were measured not by time, but by the whim of the emperor, by the joy of the crowd. But the crowd is gone now, their cheers faded into history, their names lost in the dust. What remains then of the gladiators who fought for their lives? What remains of the nameless souls who perished in the sands, their bodies thrown into the oblivion of forgotten memory? As we wander deeper into the Colosseum's heart, we pause to listen to the silence that surrounds us. Beneath our feet, the echoes of the past linger, faint whispers of a time when men fought, not for their own freedom, but for the favor of an empire that saw them as nothing more than tools of spectacle. And yet, even in their suffering, there was a certain nobility, a nobility that was crushed beneath the weight of the empire's thirst for power. The games, though meant to glorify Rome, were built on the broken bodies of men whose names would never be recorded in the annals of history. Forgotten, like the stones beneath our feet, they were swallowed by the empire's ambition, left to fade with the years, leaving behind only the faintest trace of their lives. What stories lie hidden in the ruins of the Colosseum, in the very stones that once bore witness to the games? As we move through the crumbling corridors, we imagine the faces of those who once walked these halls, the gladiators, the slaves, the prisoners, all bound by fate, by circumstance, by the call of the arena. They were promised glory, immortality even, but in the end all they found was death. Their names, like their lives, disappeared into the sands, and now nothing remains of them but the faint echo of their struggles. Perhaps there is a sadness to this, a tragedy that is impossible to escape. Perhaps the games were never truly about the warriors or their victories. Perhaps they were always about the empire's need to control, to remind the people of its strength through the suffering of others. And yet there is beauty in this silence. The Colosseum, even in its decay, holds a kind of sacred stillness. The fading arches, the crumbled columns, the empty seats, they speak of a time when power and glory were all that mattered. And in the end, it is this very power that destroyed the empire, consumed it from the inside, until only the hollow shell of the Colosseum remained. The games may have ended, but the echoes of that time continue to reverberate through the ruins, through the walls that still stand, their silence telling stories no one is left to hear. As the day fades into night, we stand beneath the vast dome of the Colosseum, looking out over the empty arena. The wind stirs the dust, lifting it into the air like memories long forgotten. The stars begin to twinkle softly above, their distant light reflecting off the weathered stones. We feel a deep sense of reverence for this place, not for the games that once took place here, but for the stories that have been lost to the passing of time. The Colosseum is more than just a ruin. It is a tomb for the forgotten, a monument to a time when power and cruelty ruled the world. And yet, in the quiet of the night, we feel the presence of those who came before us, the gladiators, the emperors, the crowds, still lingering, their spirits bound to the very stones of the arena. The silence deepens, and as we step away from the ruins, we are left with the sense that perhaps the Colosseum was never meant to be fully understood. Perhaps the games were not meant to bring glory, but to remind us of the fragility of life, of the impermanence of all things. The Colosseum, once a symbol of Roman might, now stands as a testament to the decay of an empire, to the inevitable collapse that comes with power built on the suffering of others. And so we leave the Colosseum behind, its silent ruins still standing as a monument to what was and what is no more. Perhaps it was never meant to be found, the true meaning of the games, the true cost of the empire's glory. Perhaps the dead games of the Colosseum are a reminder that some stories are meant to fade with the passage of time, leaving only the whisper of a memory that lingers long after the crowds have gone, long after the emperor's voice has faded into the past. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen, and as we drift into the silence of the night, we are left to ponder what remains in the shadows of the Colosseum, the ghosts of a time long gone, the spirits of those who once fought for their lives, and the quiet weight of an empire that rose on the strength of its games and fell into silence beneath the weight of its own cruelty. The Colosseum stands as it always has, but now, in the soft twilight, the air around it seems different, quieter, deeper, like the earth itself is holding its breath. The arches, though weathered by time, still rise tall and solemn, casting long shadows that stretch across the stone, across the sand, where once there was only the thunderous roar of a crowd. Now, in the silence, the empty seats look like forgotten thrones, waiting for a presence that will never return. It is said that the great Colosseum, once a place of grand spectacle, was not merely an arena of gladiators, but a theater of fate, where power and death danced together in a cruel waltz. Beneath the moonlight, the ruins breathe the stories of men who walked its halls, their fates sealed by the will of the emperor, their lives measured not in years, but in moments. And yet, in that very place where death was a certainty, some fought for the prize of victory. But what is victory in a place like this? Was it ever really a triumph? Or was it merely an illusion? We step back in time, moving through the heart of the arena, feeling the weight of the past on our skin. The sands beneath our feet are no longer soaked with the blood of the fallen, but their whispers still linger in the wind. We follow the path of a famed gladiator, his name known to many, a hero of the games, a man whose victories rang through the Colosseum, each battle a new testament to his strength and endurance. His fame was immense, his skill paralleled. With every fight, the crowd adored him, roaring in admiration as he stood victorious, his chest heaving with the weight of his triumph. His life, it seemed, was one of glory, a man destined to rise above all others. But the true cost of his victories remains hidden, woven into the silence of the arena, beneath the moon's soft gaze. It is here, in the stillness, that the bitterness of his triumph becomes clear. He was not free. With each victory, he won not his freedom, but only the chance to fight again. The crowd's cheers, once so loud, now ring hollow in his ears. What did he truly win? A crown of fleeting glory? The admiration of those who would never understand the price he paid? The sound of the crowd's adulation, once a source of power, became a weight around his neck, a constant reminder that his worth was measured not by his spirit, but by his ability to kill, to survive, to entertain. His victories, each one celebrated as a moment of greatness, were nothing more than the promise of another fight, another battle to the death. The empire, with its hunger for spectacle, demanded more. The arena, with its endless thirst for blood, asked for everything and gave nothing in return. His victories, though celebrated, were never enough. They could never be enough. In the cold night air, we pause to reflect on the paradox of victory. What did it mean to fight for honor, when honor itself was warped by the demands of an empire? What was glory when it was only an illusion? The gladiator, though revered, was never free. He was a puppet, dancing on the strings of the emperor, the crowd, the empire. The prize he sought was never in his grasp, for it was a prize that existed only in the minds of those who watched, those who cheered, and those who controlled the arena. Beneath the silence of the Colosseum, the wind stirs the sand, and the echoes of long-lost battles seem to rise from the earth itself. The gladiator, now a shadow in the ruins, stands alone in the arena, his sword lowered, his chest heavy with the weight of the years. What victory did he truly claim? The adulation of a crowd that could not see beyond the spectacle? The promise of immortality that could never be fulfilled? For the real victory, the one he had longed for, was never within his grasp. It was freedom, a freedom that could only be found outside the walls of the arena, beyond the gaze of the emperor and the roar of the crowd. We follow the gladiator's gaze as he looks out over the empty arena, the grand stone arches, now silent witnesses to the cost of glory. The crowd is gone, the emperor's voice has long faded into the past, and yet the arena stands. It stands as a monument to the truth that was buried beneath the games, that victory, when it is fought for in a place like this, is not a victory at all. It is a fleeting illusion, a mirage that disappears as quickly as it appears, leaving only emptiness in its wake. The sands, once stained with the blood of the fallen, now lie still, untouched by the echoes of battle. The Colosseum, though empty, seems to pulse with a quiet energy, as if the ghosts of the past still linger within its walls, whispering of the men who fought and died for a chance at freedom they would never know. The empire that built this arena, that demanded such sacrifices, is gone, but the lessons of its games remain, embedded in the stones, in the silence. Perhaps in the end, the true question is not whether the gladiators won, but what they lost. For in the pursuit of victory, they lost their humanity, their agency, their very selves. And as the Colosseum stands, now a quiet monument to their struggles, we are left to ponder, is true victory even possible in such a place? Or is it merely an illusion spun by those who sought to control the fate of others? As the night deepens, the moonlight casts long shadows over the ruins, and the wind carries the faintest sound of footsteps. But it is only the silence that remains, deep and unbroken. The games have ended, but the echoes of their meaning linger. And in this stillness, we are left to contemplate the true cost of glory, the price of victory, and the spirits of those who fought for a freedom they could never claim. Perhaps it was never meant to be found, the true meaning of victory, the cost of glory, in a place where life and death were mere tools of control. Perhaps it was only meant to fade into the silence of the arena, where memory is buried beneath the weight of time. And yet, in the quiet of the night, beneath the crumbled stone and the forgotten sands, the echoes of lost victories still whisper, waiting for someone to listen. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. And perhaps, in the silence of the Colosseum, we can finally hear them. In the dead of night, the Colosseum stands shrouded in darkness, its once great arches now softened by the quiet passage of time. The wind whispers through the broken stone, carrying with it a distant, forgotten hum, echoes of a past long buried, yet never truly gone. The structure, though weathered and crumbled, retains the faintest trace of its former grandeur, as though the very bones of this ancient monument still carry the memory of the thousands who once stood beneath its towering walls. Yet now it is empty. The vibrant pulse of life, of battle, of spectacle has faded, leaving behind only silence. And in that silence, the ghosts remain. It is said that when the crowds disappeared and the games came to an end, something lingered in the Colosseum's shadows, the souls of those who fought, who bled for the amusement of emperors and the joy of the masses, never truly left. They remained, bound to the stone, to the very ground where they once fell. Their cries, their pain, and their final thoughts still resonate through the corridors, reverberating against the walls as though trapped in an eternal loop. Beneath the pale light of the moon, the ruins of the Colosseum seem to pulse with the weight of these unseen presences. The wind stirs the dust, carrying with it fragments of lost voices. If we listen closely, we can hear them, the gladiators whose names have been erased, their stories left untold. They fought not for glory, but for survival, their fates sealed by the will of an empire that saw them as mere instruments of entertainment. And yet even in their death, they remain immortalized in the bones of the Colosseum, their restless spirits wandering through its haunted corridors. As we step into the heart of the Colosseum, the air grows thick with the weight of history. The once thriving arena is now a hollow shell, its once glorious seating tiers now cracked and empty. Each step we take on the weathered stone seems to stir something, a presence just beyond our grasp, a memory that refuses to fade. The corridors, once bustling with the hurried footsteps of gladiators preparing for battle, now stand still, filled only with shadows. But in the silence there is movement, faint, almost imperceptible. It is as if the very stones are alive, breathing with the memories of those who stood here before us. We move deeper, following the path of those long gone, walking in the footsteps of warriors who were thrust into a fight they could not escape. The gladiators, often slaves or prisoners of war, walked these very paths, knowing that their lives were not their own, knowing that each step forward could lead to their final breath. The Colosseum, though a symbol of Roman might, was also a tomb, one where countless souls were buried, not in the earth, but in the very walls that once held them captive. The echoes of their struggles, their courage and their fear still linger in the air, a constant reminder of their sacrifice. Every corner we turn reveals another piece of their story. The crumbled stone beneath our feet is no longer just stone, it is a grave. The once proud arches, now faded and broken, were once the entryways to the arena, where men faced their fate in the eyes of the emperor, the eyes of the crowd. What did they feel in those final moments? What thoughts ran through their minds as they awaited their turn in the arena? Perhaps they imagined their families, their homes, the lives they had lost. Perhaps they wondered as they stood there waiting to fight whether they would be the one to survive. But the only certainty in the Colosseum was that death would come, sooner or later, for all who fought. And yet the courage of these men cannot be denied. They fought not for honor, not for glory, but for the fleeting chance at life, at freedom, at a moment's reprieve from the endless cycle of violence. Their names may have been lost to history, their lives reduced to little more than a brief moment of spectacle, but their spirits remain. They are the ghosts of the Colosseum, their sacrifices etched into the very bones of the arena, their courage woven into the stone. The deeper we venture into the heart of the Colosseum, the stronger the sense of reverence grows. The wind, once gentle, now carries a weight, as though it too feels the presence of those who have long since passed. The faintest sound of footsteps seems to echo in the distance, but when we turn, there is nothing but the empty ruins. Still, we know they are here, these lost souls, these forgotten heroes. Perhaps they wander the halls, still trapped in the endless cycle of fight and death, never free, never able to escape the walls that once held them captive. The Colosseum stands, its broken form silhouetted against the night sky, its grandeur now a shadow of what it once was. The stone arches, though cracked and weathered, still rise high, reaching for the heavens. The arena floor, once soaked in blood, now lies silent, the sand untouched by the violence of the past. And yet, in the silence, we hear the echoes of the gladiators, those whose names have faded into the dust, whose stories have been swallowed by time. Their spirits linger, bound to the earth, to the very stones that once held them captive. Perhaps the Colosseum was never just an arena, never just a place of bloodshed and spectacle. perhaps it was always meant to be a monument to those who fought, to those who gave everything in the name of an empire that cared little for their lives. And perhaps, in the quiet stillness of the night, we are meant to listen to the ghosts of the gladiators, their whispers, their cries, their courage. They were forgotten by history, but they are never truly gone. The moon rises higher in the sky, casting a soft glow over the ruins, and the wind stirs once again, carrying the whispers of those who have long since passed. The Colosseum stands, a silent monument to their sacrifice, to the ghosts who walk its halls. In the distance, the faintest sound of footsteps echoes in the dark, and as we listen, we are left with the understanding that perhaps some voices are not meant to be heard in the moment. Perhaps they are meant to echo only when we are ready to listen. Perhaps it was never meant to be found, the true story of the gladiators, their victories, their sacrifices, their deaths. Perhaps it is enough to know that they remain, woven into the very fabric of the Colosseum, their spirits rising with the moon, forever a part of the arena that once was their prison and their grave. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen, and as the wind dies down and the night settles deeper, we are left in the silence, contemplating the path of those who walked before us, the path of the gladiators, the path of courage and death, bound forever to the bones of the Colosseum. The Colosseum, even in its ruin, still holds a certain majesty beneath the moonlit sky. Its crumbled arches rise high against the weight of time, casting long, soft shadows across the dust-covered earth. A distant wind stirs the sand, lifting it briefly before letting it settle back into stillness. The arena is quiet now, devoid of the roaring crowds, of the clashing of swords, of the cries of men and beasts alike. And yet, in this silence, there is a weight that hangs over the Colosseum, as though the very stone is still remembering the spectacle that once filled it. It is said that the Colosseum was a place of masks, a grand stage where each man, each fighter, wore not only the weight of his armor, but the weight of the identity bestowed upon him. Here, heroes and villains, gods and beasts were born from the dust and blood, molded by the hands of an empire that sought to control the narrative of life and death. The crowds cheered, their faces filled with adoration or revulsion, but behind the masks, the truth was often far darker than the spectacle allowed. In the quiet of the ruins, we are left to ponder these masks. What did they mean to those who wore them? The gladiators, stripped of their names and their pasts, were transformed into the very masks they were forced to wear. Some were seen as gods, immortal figures of strength and skill, adored by the masses. Others were seen as villains, condemned to fight, their every action met with disdain. But behind each mask there lay a different truth, a truth that was often buried beneath layers of myth, of manipulation, and of fear. The mask became not just a symbol, but a tool, an instrument of control. As we wander through the forgotten corridors of the Colosseum, we begin to peel back the layers of this grand spectacle. The stone beneath our feet seems to echo with the memories of those who once walked here, their footsteps long faded into the dust. The faces of the fighters are no longer visible, but the masks they wore are etched into the very fabric of the arena. The masks, both literal and metaphorical, were used to shape the narrative of the games, to transform the fighters into something larger than life, something the people could idolize, something they could hate. And yet, what happens when the mask is removed? What is left when the spectacle fades, when the crowd's cheers die down, when the blood-soaked sand is swept away? Beneath the mask there was always a person, just a man or woman, struggling for survival in a world that cared only for entertainment, for spectacle, for power. As we move deeper into the heart of the arena, the illusion begins to unravel. The once proud seats that once held the emperor, the senators, and the masses now lie empty. The grand arches that once framed the grandest of performances now rise like silent sentinels, their stone worn smooth from centuries of history. There is no sound here but the soft rustling of the wind, carrying the weight of untold stories. What did the gladiators think of the masks they wore? Some were adorned in gold and bronze, their armor shining in the light, their faces hidden behind visors and shields. They were gods in the eyes of the crowd, heroes to be celebrated. But what of the men behind the masks, the men who wore them not for honor but for survival? What did they think as they stood in the shadows, preparing to step into the light? What thoughts raced through their minds as they realized that the mask they wore would never allow them to be truly seen? In the quiet of the arena, the masks begin to lose their power. They lie discarded on the sand, forgotten relics of a time when their meaning was so carefully crafted. The weight of the mask, once so heavy, now seems insignificant, like a fading memory. The arena, though still vast, feels smaller now, as if the walls themselves are closing in, as if the empire that built this place is nothing more than a distant whisper. The manipulation of the masses, the exploitation of the fighters, the creation of false identities, all of it fades into the background as we reflect on the true cost of the games. The gladiators, though celebrated, though adored, were nothing more than pawns in a game they could never win. The emperor watched from above, his judgment cold and unfeeling, while the crowd roared for more blood, for more spectacle. But beneath it all, beneath the layers of masks and performances, the truth was clear. The games were never about glory, never about honor. They were about control. The empire used the mask to shape reality, to create heroes and villains, to distract from the suffering and the silence beneath. We pause now, standing in the center of the arena, where the sand once soaked in blood. There are no masks here now, just the empty space, the silence that fills the void. The Colosseum stands, its arches crumbling, its walls standing tall but fragile, as if the weight of history is too much for them to bear. And yet, in this silence, there is a kind of reverence. The masks have been removed, the spectacle has ended, and all that remains is the truth. Perhaps the masks were never meant to reveal anything at all. Perhaps they were only meant to conceal, to create a narrative that would serve those in power, to build a world where the truth could never be seen. Perhaps the real story of the gladiators, their courage, their fear, their lives, was never meant to be told. Perhaps the arena, the masks, the games, were never meant to show anything more than a fleeting illusion of glory. As the moon rises higher, casting a soft light over the ruins, we are left with the image of a single mask lying discarded on the sand. It is no longer a symbol of power, no longer a tool of control. It is only a relic, a forgotten piece of a story that is slowly fading into the past. The last echoes of the crowd are gone, leaving only the soft whisper of the wind as it sweeps through the empty arena. Perhaps it was never meant to be found, the true nature of the games, the real story of those who fought beneath the emperor's gaze. Perhaps it is enough to let the masks remain, forgotten, like the souls of those who once wore them. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen, and the silence that remains in the Colosseum is the sound of those voices, waiting for the world to remember. And so we leave the arena, stepping away from the shadows and into the quiet night. The masks have fallen, and all that remains is the stillness of a forgotten time where memory fades and the ghosts of the gladiators walk the path they left behind.
The Colosseum, even in its final days, still stands tall, though its walls are worn and crumbled by the passage of centuries. The golden light of the dying sun spills over the ruins, casting long shadows that stretch across the arena, like the lingering ghosts of a past long faded. Time, like a patient river, has worn away the edges of its grandeur, and yet the stone still holds the weight of its history, its power, its myth. The air is thick with silence now, but beneath the silence there is the faintest pulse, a whisper, a heartbeat, the echo of a time when the Colosseum was filled with the roar of crowds, the clash of swords, the drama of life and death. It is said that in its last days the Colosseum was no longer the thriving spectacle it once was. The games, once a vibrant celebration of Roman might, had begun to lose their meaning, their purpose blurred by the decline of an empire. The emperor's voice had become a faint echo, and the cheers of the crowd, once deafening, had faded into memory. But still, the Colosseum stood, its ancient arches reaching for the sky, a relic of a lost world. As the sun sinks lower, we find ourselves walking through the ruins, tracing the outlines of the stone that once held the weight of thousands. The air is heavy with the presence of those who once stood here, men who fought for their lives, for their freedom, for the fleeting chance of glory. Their names have long since faded, their bodies reduced to dust, but their spirits linger in the very stones, in the silent whispers that seem to rise from the ground beneath our feet. With each step, we feel the weight of history pressing down on us, the knowledge that we are walking on the remnants of an empire, on the bones of a time that is slipping further into the shadow of the past. The last games are over now. The final battles have been fought, but their meaning is lost in the silence that has descended over the arena. What did these final moments of the games signify? Were they a last desperate attempt to preserve the glory of Rome, or were they simply a futile echo of an empire on the brink of collapse? The gladiators, who once fought with everything they had, now fought for nothing but the hollow promise of one more battle, one more moment of fleeting life. Each clash of swords, each cry of pain was a reminder that even the greatest empire is not immune to the passage of time, to the inevitable decline that comes with age and power. In the fading light, we witness the last battles, fleeting, futile. The gladiators move with a sense of resignation, as though they too can feel the weight of the end closing in on them. There is no glory here, no grand victories, only the echo of what once was,
now reduced to a sad, final performance. The crowd, once so eager for the bloodshed, now watches in silence, as if they too sense that the end is near. The Colosseum is no longer a place of triumph, but a place of death, a reminder of a world that is slipping away, a world that no longer has a place for such spectacles. As the last fighter falls, the arena falls into a deep silence. The crowd disperses, leaving only the faint echoes of their footsteps, their whispers lost in the wind. The Colosseum stands alone, its final breath fading into the twilight. The sun sinks lower, casting its final golden rays over the ruins, as though the world is saying goodbye to an old friend. The once roaring crowds are now only a memory that will soon fade like the last whispers of a dream. The games are over, the empire is crumbling, and the Colosseum, once the heart of Roman glory, is now a shadow of its former self. The air grows still as we stand at the edge of the arena, the weight of the past pressing down upon us. The Colosseum, though silent, still holds a certain majesty, an ancient dignity that refuses to fade entirely. The stone walls, though cracked and broken, still reach toward the heavens, as if they too are unwilling to let go of what was once. We can almost hear the echoes of the past, the laughter, the cries, the roar of the crowd, but those voices are gone now, lost to time. What remains is a memory, a ghost, a fading image of a world that no longer exists. And yet, even in its death, the Colosseum continues to cast long shadows over the city. It is a reminder, a monument to a time when life and death were measured in battles fought for the amusement of the empire. The empire has fallen, but the Colosseum remains, standing as a silent testament to the fleeting nature of glory, to the inevitable decline of all things, to the fragility of power. The last breath of the Colosseum lingers in the air, and as we walk away from its broken walls, we are left with a sense of awe, of reverence, of loss. The empire is gone, the games have ended, but the Colosseum, even in its ruin, still holds the memory of what it once was. Perhaps it was never meant to be found again, this last roar, this final echo of an empire's glory. Perhaps it was always meant to fade, like the last breath of the day, leaving only the silence, the dust, and the memory of something that once was. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen, and perhaps in the stillness of the Colosseum, beneath the fading light of the setting sun, we can finally hear the last whispers of a world long gone, whispers that linger in the stones, in the dust, in the silence that now fills the air. The Colosseum may have fallen, but its memory remains, casting long shadows over the city, over the world, over time itself. And so, as the night stretches on, the Colosseum grows quiet. The crowds have gone home, the torches fade, and the vast stone arena, once roaring like a storm, returns to silence. What remains are echoes of footsteps in dark corridors, of hidden doors and underground chambers, of a world where glory and danger lived side by side. But you are safe here now, far from the noise of ancient Rome. If you enjoyed drifting through history with us tonight, you can gently support Twilight Tale by liking the video, subscribing, and leaving a soft comment, maybe telling me which part of tonight's story you'd like to explore next. For now, let your thoughts slow down and let the last echoes of the Colosseum disappear into the dark. Good night, and I'll see you in the next Twilight Tale.